Hello everybody, welcome back to another day of outboard discussion. What you're looking at here is a 1977 Evinrude 35 horsepower outboard, and it does not have a tiller handle, so that makes this a remote controlled and an electric start motor. Now you can have remote controlled engines without electric start, but this one's got electric start. Full option motor here. In 1977 it would have came with a couple of accessories to control that thing. Those are right here. We have the controller harness itself, which gives you the key and choke, and the Evinrude Johnson Simplex controller, which will operate the shift and throttle. The controller is pretty basic. You have a lever here, controls the shift, and then you have the big lever here that should be red, that controls the throttle. For this discussion, we're not going to be seeing this, I don't think, again, so let's get this out of here. What we're looking at here is the wiring. This is your 1977 wiring harness. If you notice, it has a black plug. This you get mounted on your boat somewhere at the console or the helm or the steering wheel, whatever you want to call it. Choke, on, start. Let's go ahead and pop this cover off, see what we're dealing with. Now we have a pretty common wiring harness inside of this era of motor. If you notice, it has a black plug. With that black plug, we also have a bunch of wiring spliced and added in, a couple of butt splices, some electrical tape, and just a lot of rigging. Now, the wiring of 43 years ago isn't what it is today. Wiring back then starts to get this old. It starts to deteriorate and starts to fall apart. And this one fell victim to the same fate. Now, in an ideal world, this wiring would be perfectly fine. In which case, black plug. We plug the two together, however they're supposed to go, like that. This runs to our console, controls our motor. Now the problem here is with this harness. Most of the time when you buy an outboard, a used outboard, you don't get these accessories with it, meaning you don't get this plug either. So if you wanted to use the outboard as is, assuming the wiring didn't fall apart here, you would need to hunt down this side. That is a difficult chore to do. These motors are pretty common. Harness, not so much. I think what happens when somebody has some old junk boat they want to get rid of, the outboard is still okay, they unplug it, disconnect it, scrap or junk the boat, and then try to sell the outboard, only discover they're missing parts. You as the potential buyer, well, okay, you'll get that stuff later. You purchase the outboard for, probably a pretty decent price. And then you hunt this down, only to discover, good luck. Can't find them. Now that is the first problem. Second problem is the plug itself may not be any good. This one has been probably repaired or spliced back together, which is fine, unless the damage is within the plug, in which case you're screwed. Let's run some battery cables in this engine, power it up, see what our harness is like. Okay, battery cables are connected. Let's go ahead and slide the camera back. Let's plug in our harness. I'm going to assume that the rigging that somebody did here is still good. Let's see if we have all our functions. Choke. Well, let's turn it on. Choke. Nothing. Start. Nothing. This is not wired right. I'm thinking about just undoing it all, fixing it. Let's do that. We'll reconvene in a few minutes. Alright, ignition has been expertly repaired. The wires go to their proper places now, and we don't have any bonus wires hanging out. So in theory, if it was going to work, now would be the time. Let's check out the choke. Works. Start. Again, solenoid works, starter doesn't. Or solenoid clicks, but no power goes to the starter. And stop function probably works too. So that's good. This is a functioning harness again. On a side note, this is an aftermarket switch, making it incredibly difficult to figure out which pins are where. So, again, one of the added benefits of using an Evinrude switch instead of an aftermarket. So this would need an engine wiring harness. You don't really want to trust butt splices. If these are even butt splices, they might just be, yeah, that's a butt splice. But anyway, you don't know how long this slice is going to last. This wiring, this is obviously from probably Home Depot, given its coating. You can't trust it. especially with vibration from an engine, you don't know how long these splices are going to last. It's just a good idea to change out the harness. But harness is available. 2 companies make it, so pretty easy to find. All right, now we're over in hypothetical world. You just bought this motor, no controls, no harness, and now you got to order a controller. Well, you just got done scouring eBay for that black harness I just showed you. Can't find it. Well, you can get an Evinrude simplex controller decently cheap, but that doesn't fix the harness problem. What do? One option, buy yourself a controller. There we go, nice good old controller. Should match that boat perfectly. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Wait a minute, this one's red, this one's black. What do we do? Well, it'll still plug in okay, so let's give it a try. The arrows don't line up. It's not really plugging in very well. Aha, but wait! A new harness has arrived. Wait, that one has a red plug. We need a black plug. No, we do not. Alright, a couple of things I glossed over in that little sped up video. This plug, you can tell by looking at it, at least I can, that it's falling apart. That's why I didn't mind the yank out the terminal approach. And if you notice when I put it back in, it's just kind of floppy. The plug needs to be changed. I'm going to gloss over that. We'll fix that off camera later. The rest of it, installed and hooked up just fine. What does that do? Well, it gives us a little more modern of controller option. Why did I put that in there? There. Now, we'll just pretend that's connected all the way. Now, we have start, choke, and stop. I'm assuming works. I don't really feel like testing it, but works fine. And that harness has a tachometer signal on it, which means if we cared to, we could open up the lower cover here, get to the gray wire, and hook up a tachometer to this motor. Now, this scenario I gave you of buying the motor, not having the controls or harness, that is a very, very real scenario that happens all the time to a lot of people. Secondly, the other thing, the wiring falling apart happens all the time as well. There are so many times where I get emails, phone calls, people visiting, whatever, where they say, hey, I need a black harness for my 25-35 horsepower motor. Do you have one? My answer is yes, I have one that I use for myself. I do not have any spares, nor do I have one to sell you. This replacement harness fixes that problem and allows you to use a newer controller. Now, what are the problems with using a red plug? Well, none, really, honestly. It allows you a whole lot of controller options. You could use this one, the 73 series Power Pilot. You could use one of the newer ones, the, I don't know if they actually have a name, Command Center, but Command Center is one of these, just a Johnson version. I don't know, anyway, one of the newer 77 series controllers, or if you really want to get fancy, one of the brand new E-Tech types. But that'll require an adapter harness. But here's the thing. Most of the time, pretty much every time, I don't think I've seen one in good shape yet, the black plug on this motor, the original wiring harness, is falling apart. So you need to replace the wiring anyway. At that point, you need to spend $100 for a new wiring harness. You might as well get it one that's going to match whatever setup you're going to be using. So in this case, that is exactly what happens. We have an engine, no controller, no wiring. And our wiring is falling apart on the motor anyway. So rather than spending $100 for a black harness and then hoping we can find another black boat harness to control it, I replaced the red harness here, or the harness with the red plug, and any old controller. Makes life easy. So I hope that gave you some insight. A lot of people ask about this all the time. Hey, I need wiring, what do I do? And I ask them, well, what kind of controller do you have? And they have one of these. I said, okay, well, here, and I list this long, drawn-out email of different options you can do, which is why I'm making this video. I'm tired of sending those emails. Maybe this video will kind of answer a lot of questions on that. Well, to sum it all up, red plug on your controller, you need a red plug on your engine. Black plug on your controls, black plug on your engine. Pretty simple. Well, this was supposed to be a simple repair, but apparently now I have a starter/solenoid to diagnose and a plug connector to replace. But such is life. Alright everybody, see you next time.